Hello and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. It is November 30th, 2023, and I am James Jones. I'm joined today by Mr. Greg Leahy.
Ahoy, hoy, everyone.
Mr. Guillaume Vayette.
Excited that that November is almost behind us.
It is. We've almost escaped this month and now move into another month that is not largely distinguishable except for the holiday at the end. So, hey, there's that.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, John's not here. John is out this week, as we said he would be last week, so he will not be on episode 850, a great momentous occasion where we created the Mario face ship of carts, and he will not be on this week where some other horror will be created, and he will never listen to those episodes, and therefore these memes, if they come back at any point, will be lost on him. So be sure to fill your emails with as many references to these two episodes as you care to put in there and address them directly to John in a way to confuse him. It will be very fun. We're going to go ahead and get started with new business, and I'll go first by saying I don't have any new business because I've been dealing with a bunch of other stuff and don't get to play video games anymore. Enjoy it while it lasts, kids. Instead, I'm going to turn to Guillaume.
All right. I guess I'm going to start with WarioWare Move It, because it is the newest game that I've been playing. Unfortunately, I haven't been playing it all that much, and I haven't played it in the past week. So it's not even super fresh in my mind. But I guess that kind of says something about the game already.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm not enjoying it. Like, I enjoyed it when I was playing it. It's just that there's been so much that coming out, and Karen and I did finish Mario Wonder, by the way, Mario Brothers Wonder. And I think I ended up liking it a little bit more towards the end than at the beginning. So there's that. But yeah, so we've been mostly playing that, or like when my mother-in-law was visiting, we were playing Dr. Mario 64. Like, there was not really any impetus to pick up WarioWare and start playing that. And even though I've read that it's best enjoyed, in groups, like with other people, multiplayer, it's just not something that came up. And that I think that's partly because, like, this is very much WarioWare Smooth Moves 2, basically. It is the follow-up to the Wii game. It's very much all about stances and motion controls, and that was novel once. It's less so now, and it's kind of it's not that the games aren't good or aren't fun or aren't funny, but there's it's not novel anymore, and I think that counted for a lot in Smooth Moves. And in Move It, by contrast, it was more like, oh shit, like I actually need to find the wristbands to go on my Joy-Con, because there are
the safety straps.
The safety straps, not because you have to swing wildly, but because some stances have you, just drop the Joy-Con and let them hang from your wrists. So, like, it's not, like, you absolutely need them. It's not optional. So I had to scramble and find that in my bucket of old controllers. And yeah, so I'm still playing through the basically the intro to the game. I still haven't unlocked all the stances. I don't have any. There's nothing wrong with the presentation. Like, it's very funny. It's very much like Smooth Moves, where it introduces stances like one or two at a time. You've got the narrator just in a very kind of almost drowsy voice explaining to you these stances, and there's always a joke in there. So yeah, like it's well done, but it is like I've seen this before in Smooth Moves, and yeah, so I'm still going through that. I'm still learning the game. When I'm actually playing the mini games, I think that the motion controls have been accurate and successful more often than not. But there's always that little bit of, wait, what am I supposed to do here? Even though before every minigame, they tell you which stance you're supposed to take. Like, you might misinterpret things like, the stance where you're supposed to let go of the controllers. When are you supposed to let go of them? Is this game demanding that you just let them hang from your wrist and not move? or are they asking you to drop them at a specific time, at a specific moment? That's basically the main kind of challenge that I've been facing so far. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's wacky, it's WarioWare, but I've been busy with other games, basically, new and old. So I need to go back to it, and I'm still buying games physically. So right now, Mario Wonder is in the Switch, and so I guess maybe that's been another kind of hurdle to get past, to actually start playing WarioWare more, is that I would have to switch the cartridge. So I don't know. I don't have a really good excuse.
No, I mean, you don't need an excuse. Like, if it's just not motivating you to get in there and play it, it is what it is. Like,
yeah.
I mean, so you got through Brunder.
Yeah.
How much of Brunder's side content did you do?
Well, I'm missing one medal. I haven't gone back to know exactly what that medal is for.
I
like,
would
is
imagine
it for
that's
multiplayer?
I would imagine that's for having all the standees. So it's not really, a kind of accomplishment one. It's just, did you plow a bunch of coins into getting the standees? Which I did mention this, when I was wrapping up my kind of playthrough of it. Like, I ended up wasting a bunch of coins because I just thoughtlessly hit the limit and wasn't spending them.
Same.
So yeah, I did end up, as I mentioned, going back, running through some levels with Yoshi, which is essentially like easy mode, actually trying out the online, got a few more coins, and then did get that medal just to yep, that's definitely it. There it is. That's everything. But yeah, not terribly essential, must be said.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So that's good to know. I've done all the content basically. I unlocked the badge that makes the sounds, and I'll leave it at that.
Indeed.
It's funny. It's funny because I I was listening to your impressions, and everyone talked about how tough the last stage was, and it was, but I guess because it had been hyped so much, I expected to basically never finish it. Like, I never did.
I still haven't, because I haven't gone back.
Oh, okay.
I Dave the Divered.
Yeah, I gave up in Super Mario 3D World, despite loving that game. Like, that last stage.
I think I mentioned this, but it's way harder. The 3D World one is way harder.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, well, just so I actually got into eventually a good rhythm in the last stage in Super Mario Brunder, and I didn't have any issues. I think, James, you were struggling maybe with the wall jump. I eventually got, there's a part where it really demands that you wall jump well in that last stage. Yes. And I think eventually I got to a point where it was just what do you call it? Muscle memory.
It definitely feels like it's one of those situations where you could also just have a run where things go well for you.
Yeah. Yeah,
and it's just things just went well and I cleared it.
Nice. Yeah, so basically eventually I got to the point where all the beginning part of basically all the parts of that level that are not the last part I could do pretty well. And it was just a matter of finishing that last part where you're forced to use the invisible badge. And I failed a bunch of times, but then eventually I got it. I failed to hit the top of the flagpole.
Yep.
But then not that many tries later, I got it. So I felt like, okay, this was good. I'm glad I didn't have to give up, basically.
The fact that it has checkpoints is one of the big, because you still have you said, a sort of a section leading up to that invisible part where you've got some tricky badge-based, challenges that you're going to have to do every time just to get to the invisible part. But it's not the whole thing. Whereas a lot of the time with those, certainly I think the 3D Land and 3D World and probably Galaxy 2 as well, although that's so long ago, don't put too much faith in my recollection of that. Where it's like, no, for this level there are no flagpole, middle flags. It's just you've got to do everything in one shot. Which, especially the 3D World one, being as long as it is, was just.
I think I did the 3D World one on stream for like 2.5 hours and would just keep biting because you had to basically play it perfectly. Mm-hmm. And then I did it the next morning and I got it on like the second try. And I'm like, well, that stream's going to be real short. Oh, well. But it's like 7.5 minutes of just nothing. Just go. And yeah, you screw up. Guess what? You're back at the beginning. If you screw up at 7 minutes and 29 seconds, you're still back at the beginning. Have fun.
It's got that hellish climax with the boost pads and the sort of like those things that emit those like rings that mean it's these sort of overlapping circles of death, and you're going really fast. And like, so I did that, I think, with 2 characters on Wii U, but with the Switch version, I did it with Toad, whose jump is pitiful, and that bit is even hard. If you didn't think that level could get any harder, do it with Toad. It's quite a bit more.
It sucks. The thing about the Wonder one, and this is we got an email. I guess I'll mention it.
Sure.
This is from Meowth, right now it's just Meowth Discord handle VRFN. Mm-hmm. Dear our effing crew, there's been a lot of discourse over the past few years concerning lives and platformers. I'm going to cut right to the chase. I think lives are good. Having stakes is what makes games exciting, and I hate that there's a design ethos that getting delegated to indie games and Souls games. As a relic who treasures 16-bit relics, crossing the finish line by the skin of my ass is a thrill that I'm still chasing to this day. I forgot where I was going with this, but 2 worlds into Mario Wonder, I feel like dying has greater consequences than wop wop whoop. 10 coins, please. I hate when games waste my time, and games without a game over seem more alright with vague, you'll get there eventually filler. Whoa, from a knowing Flower Meowth.
You mentioned this. You talked about this email when I wasn't here.
Right.
I brought it up. Basically, I agreed with Meowth, and I still do, especially after playing that last level. Because
how many did you have going in?
I think I was pretty full. Like I had 90, and then like eventually I got to, like 50, and then 40s, and then 30 something, and I was like, like it really made me pick up those coins. Every time I was just like, I gotta get as many coins as I can because it's actually giving me 1-ups, and I want to slow down this counter as much as I can because I don't want to run out.
I went into that stage with 38 lives and got to the second checkpoint and ran out of lives and just had an emotional breakdown.
Oh, really? It's interesting. I mean, because one of the things that I quite liked about this, as I mentioned right at the beginning, was the fact that you get access to things like special world levels, or, you can access them if you have the curiosity to kind of find them and you want to play them quite early on. So what that did is it forestalled the usually inevitable thing of like, I build up a ridiculous number of lives really early on, because I was already playing a few levels earlier in the game where I would actually lose quite a few in a row by playing special world levels early. So that's, I think when the first time I tried that level, I did not have this intimidatingly huge number of lives, although the key thing, as we mentioned also, is that you can just buy them with the purple coins if you want
to. Which I wish I had done.
It is not so different from Mario Odyssey in that sense, in that there's a coins lives relationship, essentially, but it's more tucked away here behind a shop. So, you've got a little bit of that pressure in there. But, I mean, the thing is, ultimately, it's, like I said, I was surprised. I assume this was somewhat in response to the fact that I said I was surprised that they didn't just do it the way they'd done it in Odyssey, because it just felt like that was a way they were going for a long time, because so many of the games did involve, by playing the early worlds, you will have a war chest of lives in all likelihood so big that they become irrelevant. So you may as well kind of get rid of them. Especially New Super Mario Brothers 2, obviously, for obvious reasons. That they really did feel very superfluous in that game, because you're getting so many. They didn't raise the threshold for a while.
No, it was part of the joke.
Yeah, exactly. So that in that case, I think it was pretty odd. Like, here, because it's not New Super Mario Brothers 2, and because you can play harder levels out of sequence, you don't necessarily build the giant war chest as quickly, and they do feel a little more kind of still relevant. Not so much as like you're playing the original Super Mario Brothers or even Super Mario Brothers 3, no. But I guess, there's a little bit of an irony in the email from my point of view, in that it's mentioned that Meowth doesn't like games that waste your time. And yet the whole point of lives and a game over is that it wastes your time. Those are the stakes.
Right. Like, if I could have just kept playing from that second checkpoint, I definitely would have kept playing, because I would have eventually cleared it, because I wouldn't be looking at it going like, I'm out of lives. I'm out of fucking lives. I have to redo all that shit again.
That's the tension and I played very many games of that old school, both when I was a child and, still, many years later, where you feel that tension of like, holy shit, I'm actually somewhere I haven't been before. I've got past this bit that's really difficult. And then, the tension of, if you die now, you're going to have to do, all this stuff again, and it's going to take time. The wasting your time is at the very center of that tension. Those are the principal stakes. It will take me however many tries, and with it, however much time to get back to this point. So, I guess it's the way in which the thing wastes one's time that is a question here.
But I found it to be motivation for me.
Okay.
And it turned out even, when I missed the flagpole in the last stage, I went back through it and it was much easier. I still had that muscle memory for all those bits. It's really just the first time as you're learning each section of that stage, that really, you feel like, oh my God, I never want to go through that again. But then you do go through that again and it's like, well, that wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
The hard part was done. The hard part is the learning as you go.
The stage before it, I had that of oh man, I don't want to go back through this to get the coins. But then I did, and it was no problem.
I'll say one thing. I definitely felt, because I didn't get the flagpole, so then it's okay, I'm going to have to do this again to get the flagpole, aren't I? I'm not just going to let it go. But I did think, on the one hand, I know what I'm doing now should be a lot easier. But what I did was I packed a bubble suit in reserve so that when I got to the end that time, there was absolutely no way I was going to miss that flagpole. It's like, this will be it. This is, after this, it's done. It's over.
Smart. That was smart.
Yeah. Just a couple... Well, yeah, one observation from playing co-op. That last level, of course, I just did by myself. It would have been impossible with two people, or it would have been really hard anyway. But I think, now I don't remember, I think the stage before that, which was pretty tough itself, I think that we managed to clear together.
That one might actually benefit from having a second player who can pop.
You know what else what other stage benefits from having another player? That badge, that first badge, or that first challenge where you have to use the invisibility. You want to know how much this game is not designed to be multiplayer? Just think that, one player always knows where they are, is not actually invisible because they've got the little crown icon that means that the camera is on them. Yeah, so basically Karen just kept dying because she couldn't see where she was. I knew exactly where I was at all times.
That's not fair.
That stage was very, very easy for me.
That's messed up. Because that stage sucks. It is so miserable. Yeah, where are you? I don't know.
I breezed through it. I'm just that good.
Oh my god, that seems like a huge design oversight. Like somebody should have been like, okay, we got to cover up the crown guy too.
It was not a priority, obviously.
No. It's the true power down. I like that they describe that ability as like, if you want extra challenge, I'm like, it's not extra challenge, it's just fucked up. It's just the game is broken.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to make this quick, but I do like mainly what I've been playing is that I've just been going through all the Castlevanias that are Metroid-like. I said last month, I think, that I had been playing Symphony of the Night. So I played through it, and I played in the XBLA. I found most of the stuff in there, but I'm kind of confused about that version. Like, I remember Symphony of the Night ending, like, during the credits with, like, a song with vocals, and I could swear I did not get that.
Yeah, that does ring a bell. Maybe, there was some change there. Did it have the changed voice acting as well?
No, I have.
Or was that the PSP version that had that? Yeah.
That's the PSP version. So I'm very confused. I didn't find any info online about the XBLA missing anything. But then, like, online, I'm finding confusing data about, like, which what gets you which ending. Some people say, like, you need at least, like, 196% exploration of the castle to get the best ending. And others say at least 200%. And, like, so, like, I don't know why the info is not more reliable, why people don't just know this stuff. Like, this is not a new game. And every time I tried to, like, Google the ending to see, like, was my ending different? I can never just find, like, here's the XBLA ending, a version of these endings. So I don't know. Anyway, I didn't hear the very kind of semi Celine Dion sounding vocals that are kind of like weirdly out of place at the end of a Symphony of the Night.
Yeah, I definitely have had that ending, but I think that's probably because the first time and probably the most recent time that I played it would have been the PSN version, the retro version, essentially.
Right.
But yeah, I've also had it on XBLA, also had it on the Dracula X Chronicles on PSP, which was then essentially kind of like put on PS4 at some point, like slightly different or whatever. So there are a few different releases of it, and then I guess you got international variations and the Saturn version, and so maybe that confuses the search question.
Yeah, quick observations on Symphony of the Night. It's been called, like on some year, like maybe in '98 or probably later. I think EGM put it on the top of their best games of all time list, their top 100 list. I think it was their first such list. And it's just funny how I don't think that holds up, for reasons that are kind of outside of Symphony of the Night itself, like it's just, it's been so kind of influential, or it's been like the Metroidvania is now a genre, basically. And so what used to be so kind of unique and so impressive is now a little bit more commonplace, or we have more things to compare it to. And so Symphony of the Night, like, when I go back to it now, I'm more likely to see the ways in which it's the things that are not that great about it. I guess, like, what is impressive to me is all the things they put in there that they absolutely did not have to put in there. Like all the little secrets, all the little, like the pair of boots that makes your character 1 pixel higher. I think they're called the secret boots. And so they make you taller, give you confidence. The fact that to eat a peanut, you have to press the button, like he throws it in the air above his head, and you have to take like a tiny step forward and hold up, and that's how you eat the peanut. Otherwise, you just miss. There's there are rooms in the castle where, like, I have no idea if I was supposed to do something special or not. Like, there's one where there's a confessional, and there are different ghosts that go in there, and you can go on the confessee side, where, you know, like the priest, the ghost priest will take your confession, I suppose, but then, like, some blades come out and, you know, hurt you. There are two different priests, so, you know, it's kind of random which one you get, but they both impale you, so I don't know what the point is. Or you can go on the priest side of the confessional, and the ladies who are confessing their sins also just stab you with tons of weapons. So if there was something to discover there, I have no idea. But it's just cool that, like, yeah, sure. It's a random room with a confessional. There are ghosts in there. They're not actually enemies, but they will hurt you if you if you try to interact with this. But the stuff that's less great is that, like, actually this was me continuing a game that I started about 2 years ago, and that I just stopped. I just gave up because the beginning of this game is so slow. The first power-ups that are available to you, a lot of them are just not that impressive or not that useful, you know? The first transformation that you get is into the wolf form, and it can't do shit. I don't know if, like, it has a single use until you find the upgrade for the wolf form, which lets you kind of dash, and, like, that's the way that you can get through some parts of the castle by going really, really fast. But before that, it's absolutely useless. Yeah, like, so I don't know, like, the one of the first power-ups that you get, like, now you can open blue doors. Oh, great. Fantastic. And there's, like, 3 blue doors in a game, and it's, you kind of forget where they were, and I don't know, like, it's not, it's kind of annoying just how slow the beginning is. But then eventually you get the transformations, you get powers for those transformations, the game picks up, but by that point it's kind of already over. But then, of course, you beat the boss, and then you find the inverted castle, and so basically everything is upside down. Like, it's the same map, but you're now in the castle upside down, so you're walking into what used to be the ceiling, and you're making your way to, like, you're re-exploring the whole thing. But Matt Zawodniak from the Nintendo World Report pointed out to me that, like, he had heard in an interview that was a very late addition in the development of the game, and it really shows, because things are not designed to be, like, that castle was not quite designed to be explored like upside down, you know? Like, everything becomes a little bit annoying. There's, like, way more friction. Just the way that the like, you're walking around, like, normally the when you're swinging your weapon at candles, like, they're pretty much at your sword level, but in the inverted castle you always have to jump a little bit to hit them. So there's, like, that irritant. But there's also, like, right away, like, at the beginning when you start exploring the inverted castle, there's this bit where none of the jumps that you make can get you on top of platforms, on the platforms that you need to be on to get to. Like, the platforming becomes, you double jump, you can't quite, like, you're missing, like, just a few pixels to make it on top of the platform. And so, like, I would have to, just for a second, change into the bat or the mist, and then change back again and land on the platform, and then repeat. And part of that is that I did not figure out how to do use the high jump boots, or whatever they're called, the gravity boots, that let you just, like, shoot wildly into the air. The game never really doesn't explain in game what the controls are for that, and I kind of forgot that you're supposed to do down, then up, and then the jump button, basically. So I could have saved myself some frustration there. But nevertheless, like the fact that you would need to do that high jump move just to do regular platforming shows that it's not great. But yeah, overall, like I was glad. I guess I was enjoying the game enough. I just moved right on through to the Castlevania Advance Collection, and I played through Circle of the Moon, which is a lot more ho-hum than I remembered. Don't need to say a whole lot about that one, except that it plays like basically Metroidvanias, like early Metroidvanias that just had to say like, look at me, I'm a Metroidvania, play me, and people were enjoying it enough, like absolutely by the numbers, not really anything super interesting about it, but it existed and that was enough. And it was impressive, I suppose, for being like one of the like launch GBA titles. Like it was probably the biggest original title that you could get at the GBA launch. So that was something. But, today it doesn't fare so well. And then immediately Harmony of the Night. So I'm about like a quarter of the way through that one. It plays much better. I'm enjoying it a lot more. And I did not enjoy it back then, but then again, I played it right after Area of Sorrow. And so it suffered from that comparison. But now, and I never finished it back in the day. I was like, I went back to Harmony of Dissonance. I was like, well, this is not great. And I just basically, left it aside. I didn't complete it. But playing it after Circle of the Moon, it feels like a masterpiece. And so I think I'm going to, play through it and enjoy it a whole lot more. So the key here is to not play a much better game right before it.
Play a much worse game before every game you play. So whenever you're going to play a game, go on the eShop and buy any random game. It's probably worse than the one you want to play. Mm-hmm. Play that and then play the game you wanted to play. And it's like, it's paradise now.
Yeah.
That's the path to happiness.
Exactly. Who knew that would be the secret to happiness? I wish I had found that out earlier. I'd be much less of a sad sack.
I haven't looked at the eShop in over a week, and I'm very worried when I open up what I'm going to be hit with. The Turok bundle. Yeah. So yeah, go buy the Turok bundle, and then you've got 3 games that will definitely not be better than what you're about to go play.
Excellent. But yeah, so that's about it. Maybe I'll have an update later about Area of Sorrow or Harmony of Dissonance. But yeah, I've been enjoying the Castlevania, since basically Halloween. Castlevania is, after all, the Cowards Halloween game. So been enjoying that a lot.
Fair enough. All right. Greg, what have you been up to?
Yeah, well, as opposed to Super Ghouls and Ghosts, that's the non-cowards Halloween.
Absolutely.
That's the sadists' Halloween game.
No,
or rather, the masochists.
Yeah, so the main thing I'm going to talk about this time is Super Mario RPG, the Switch remake. So with this, I kind of resolved pretty early on that I was going to buy the game. In fact, specifically, I was going to buy a physical copy of the game, and a lot of that is bound up in sort of sentimentality, essentially. As I'm sure I've mentioned quite a few times over the years, especially when we did, I would imagine, the retroactive in 2010, I think it was. Somewhere in those early years.
A long time ago, yeah.
The feature.
Good Lord.
This was Super Mario RPG, the American version, because it never came out in Europe as a, physical game on Super Nintendo. It came out on Virtual Console later. But that was going to be my birthday present for that year. And it arrived, and then because it used one of the relatively rare sort of cartridges that wasn't a Super FX game that used the 3 the connectors, the sort of 3 sets of connectors on the bottom of the cartridge. It didn't work with any of the converters that we had to run on my Japanese machine. And so it was basically, it's just going to have to go back. That's it. It wasn't really going to bother too much buying different converters and stuff because in 96, that summer, we were about to get the N64. So it just kind of felt like, well, for one game, really, it just like, no, well, that's going to go back. And, in a few months we'll be playing Super Mario 64. So I'll get over it, I guess. But, of course, it did come out on Virtual Console. 2008, I'm quite confident it was, one of the Hanabi festivals, as they were called here, because, we had more import titles to make little festivals out of, because not only would you have things that had not come, to any of the Western markets from Japan before, but you also had things like Super Mario RPG, where, it had been, something that would have been in North America, but not in Europe. So that was the first time I played it. And I must say, it has actually, there have been quite a few times I've been playing this, and it's like, this reminds me of being in 2008. It was just a strange sort of thing to have nostalgia about, and for a game that is very, very faithful to something from 96, but that is what it's brought back memories for me. But I did like the idea of having the physical game here, of like replacing that hole that the failure of it to function in 96 and my converters at that time kind of left in my collection of such things. So this is the first time I've been playing it since 2010. I went through it in 2008, went back to it for the retroactive couple of years later or so, but now coming back to it, like I said, I definitely wanted it, but a lot of that was a kind of sentimentality thing. So it was still a certain amount of like, okay, is it, how worth it is it going to feel, or like, well, I was willing to kind of take a chance on that. And overall, I'd say now, having seen the credits, and I've not done all the kind of there's some sort of rematches with bosses, sort of super bosses, essentially, that are kind of much more difficult than their original versions for you to do if you've kind of cleared the game. But I've not done all of those. But like I said, I've seen the credits, and I'd say overall it was on the upper end of my sort of expectations. I was rather pleased with how it turned out, because I think first of all, visually, looking at the game, again, I didn't look at it, scrutinise the pre-release stuff too much, because, as we said, I'd already decided to purchase it, so there didn't seem to be terribly much point. But still, to me, actually playing it exclusively in handheld on my OLED model, I felt like the graphics came through quite a lot more nicely, actually, on the hardware than just looking at screenshots and videos. The lighting, the little details on that, it really is quite, and just, it is very, very faithful to that 96 game, but it really feels like it sort of come to life, or kind of like, okay, this is what they were going for, but they couldn't really do quite with the pre-rendered, and then turn it into flat sprites and do it that, like it's really, really nicely done from a visual point of view. But then also you've got some of the changes visually, like the characters, are sort of more on model for the ways that the characters are supposed to look, as we've got to know them since 96, but also still got that squat kind of chibi kind of look, which is very cute. Like Bowser now is just a very cute Bowser. Whereas, he was just kind of wrong in Super Mario RPG.
Right. It just didn't look right.
I just look at and this was obviously before, that Super Mario 64 renders would come along, and all the games after that kind of really nailed down, well, this is what, because Bowser would look very different from like game to game, sprite to sprite in the 80s and 90s. But yeah, he kind of looked wrong, and Peach and stuff. And now it's just like, oh no, it's the way they're meant to look, but they're sort of these cute little squat versions of themselves that fit in with the overall aesthetic really nicely. So that, I think, has turned out well. Like I said, the little flourishes, and definitely the lighting, I think, is the big thing, because it just kind of gives it this more physical kind of feel, almost like it is a sort of toy diorama that you're looking at. It still is very faithful to that aesthetic. It has the kind of plasticky kind of feel to it, but just with a bit more of a kind of flourish than, it could accomplish back then, though, that resolution and, converting renders to sprites So yeah, definitely visually, very, very. It's the sort of fullest expression of what the original Super Mario RPG was going for aesthetically. And then with the battle system, now they showed early on, the idea of like, okay, there's splash damage for getting the timed hits exactly right. Like you can kind of get credit for getting it right, in the sense that you have this kind of counter now that like if you have a streak going of correct inputs, then you get buffs, for your party while that's happening. But like you can keep the streak going without actually getting the sort of really perfect hit, which gives you like the splash damage on an attack, for instance. So it's like, well, we saw the splash damage, and we also saw the essentially triple text from Chrono Trigger, but applied to the Super Mario RPG party. And you kind of, when I saw that, it's like, okay, yeah, I like the idea of maybe this will make the battles go faster, and I think this was, more of an issue when I played it in 08, because I was playing a Wii Virtual Console, which meant I was parked in front of the television, to be playing it. Obviously, now that it's portable, I probably was never going to be as much of an issue anyway, but I was still like, yeah, I would like it if the battles went faster. But while those things can and do, make the battles go faster, I don't think they're the real sort of primary determinant of that in practice, actually. With this, mostly it's just the pace of it is so fast, the way that just the animations play out, the way that you kind of, load into the battle and come out of the battle. Everything just feels really, really fast. And also, I think what I mentioned just then, the buffs that you get for getting on a roll with the correct time hits, they also increase how fast the battle plays out. If you've got, juiced up attacks, because you've got the right party composition and the streak of button hits, to get that, then you're going to make quicker work of the enemies that way as well. So it does feel very, very crisp, much more so than what I recall it being. Although, some of that, again, with the portable play might be, a bit of a, kind of illusion. But there's no doubt it feels really good in terms of it's snappy. You just, get into battles, get out. Everything's playing out very quickly. I guess the only kind of thing you would say about that all is that in some ways, even though you'd be stressed overall, and I played on the kind of standard difficulty, there is a sort of easy difficulty that's there where they upfront say, oh, if you just want to see the story, basically. So I assume it's like super, super gentle. But even on the normal difficulty, it's a very easy game. I mean, it always was relatively easy. I assume it may, especially with these new features, be substantially easier again. So even if you're not getting the timed hits right, you're probably not going to have that much trouble or whatever. But I suppose you could say, if you're somebody perhaps a bit more like Guillaume, that's seen enough of timed hits for one lifetime or whatever, he just thinks they're kind of played out. In some ways, it's leveraging them more. Like it's actually kind of making them more, this concept of like streaks and stuff like it now. But, I kind of liked where it came out. The fact that it was like, it just expedited matters.
Right.
And it ultimately wasn't necessarily until some of these post-game super boss type of encounters where it's like, okay, yeah, here's an attack that is so powerful that if you don't get the perfect defense timed hit, it will probably one hit KO you. You're like, that's strictly kind of post game stuff. Like, generally speaking, it's kind of, because again, playing it portably, I wasn't always like 100% locked in on like, I've got the sound through the headphones to help me with the timing and all this kind of stuff. A lot of the time it's very casual, and yet it was still, just moving along at a very quick pace. Not many frictions with that, and so I just really quite enjoyed that. And definitely the triple techs are just fun to. You've got to see all the animations at least once because they're cute little, kind of the CG, so essentially a little CG movie that plays, or they blend all that kind of stuff together, like the CG movies for cutscenes, blends in really well with the in-game sort of graphics and everything. It's all pretty smooth. I guess I've seen references to sort of the frame rate hiccups in the game, because mostly pretty smooth from what I've seen. Perhaps it's a little more smooth in handheld, because I don't know, some of the things I've read suggest that either I'm just not at all sensitive to this, or that it is worse perhaps on the console. But usually there's just something going on in the environment that makes it a little more of a stress, and that's where you get the drops. Like, for instance, some very nice water effects that might be in a particular environment. You've got like the sunken ship, or the tadpole sort of pond or whatever. That tends to, like, it's a nice effect, but it does seem to put a little bit more stress than the Switch is sort of entirely comfortable with. So yeah, that was, for me, it'd be nice if it wasn't there, but it's certainly no kind of deal breaker, and not something that tends to impact gameplay. But those triple tech animations, when they play out, they're very cute. Like, you've got Mario and Peach kind of holding their hands out to charge up Mallow while he looks super determined. He's building up his lightning powers and stuff. It's very, very cute. The whole thing is very, very cute. That's a big part of the appeal, I think.
Yeah, probably, that's probably not enough for me to revisit it right now, but yeah, maybe later.
Yeah, this game never really did a lot for me, so it doesn't feel like what they did is going to motivate me, but I'm glad people who like this game have it.
No, because it is that game. I mean, you got these changes, and it's it's more changes, and it has more of an effect, and I think a beneficial effect, even if it's somewhat subtle, than like something like a Metroid Prime, like remastered, or it's you got the different controls in Metroid Prime remastered, but like the way the content is basically the same. But this is very much it is that game. So if you've played it in the past, you should have a very definite feel for whether this is something that you like the idea of having, as nicely embellished as it is, whether you actually want to play it again on Switch like this. But I've like I said, I probably enjoyed it a little bit more than I thought I would. Actually, it was a very pleasant experience. Probably should be instructive to say, seek out more of these kinds of RPGs that, kind of indies or other third parties have made, where it's like, let's do a compact RPG, that's, feels more like it's from that pre-32-bit era, when they got longer. Cause I've played the bigger, longer, more complex RPGs, obviously, finished all the Xenoblade games and stuff, but, I think the somewhat more compact ones are, a little bit more kind of to my taste. And this is very, I think it was probably, just to see the credits, I was probably not much beyond 10 hours on the game clock, because it can be very, very quick with this, especially with the changes. So, it just zips along. And, there's as I kind of did remember a little bit from playing it in the aughts or whatever, there's a little bit of like, let's just dump some battles at the end to try and make it feel a bit more kind of, I don't know, grandiose or something. There's a little bit of battle bloat right at the end, but for the most part, it's not really, it doesn't feel like it's doing too much to kind of string things out. And of course, you've got the music, which is great. The soundtrack was always one of the most strong components of that game. And with this, again, very, very faithful, but very well executed sort of reorchestrations. I think, again, probably haven't heard it in, the most exquisite detail playing portably and casually, but it seems to me like they're just kind of some subtle additions, kind of in the way the tracks kind of transition from segments and things to make it so that the loops are a bit less tight. It's not like really different or anything. It's, again, very much recreating it, but with more authentic instruments than obviously the Super Nintendo samples offered at the time. But just, subtle little kind of changes to make it a bit more kind of organic and intricate without changing the substance of the song. Really well executed. But of course, you can go and change it to the Super Nintendo sound if you like, because, I mean, those versions were very good. And if that's, what you grew up playing and really attached to it, then I could easily see why you'd want to do that. But I went with the new ones and was very pleased.
I mean, that's probably the most exciting part to me, because of course this is Shimomura soundtrack. Oh, it is,
correct? Yeah. No, and it's got, there's a lot in there that is like, this is obviously kind of foreshadows what she's going to do with the Superstar Saga and the other, Mario and Luigi games that she did, but also like kind of what she's going to go on to do with Kingdom Hearts, and there's a lot of really, really great stuff in this.
Yoko fucking Shimomura.
That's right.
Can we just get some Wu-Tang in there? God damn it.
Yeah. Nintendo, Square Enix, where's the Wu-Tang in your Mario RPG?
You never know. Post-release patch, Super Nintendo, or the new, or Wu-Tang. It could happen that those could be the three options that are initiated on the option screen at some point. Horrifying thought. No, but it's been really quite enjoyable to see some of these kind of oddball things kind of brought into like Booster. What the hell is going on there? I mean, I'm sure there's a few like little changes to the script here and there, and whatnot. But it is just that game come to life, and so all the sort of like oddness of it. I've done the sort of super boss that's just from Final Fantasy, which I hadn't done. I don't think I did that on Virtual Console. So you get the just straight out of Super Nintendo Final Fantasy battle music and the level up victory fanfare afterwards and everything. Is also the level up, the stupid little dances they do are very cute. It's just such a cute game in general. But like I said, you should know by now whether this is of interest. But it also makes me think I should get to the Live Alive remake, because obviously there's some key differences, but it seems like it's a similar sort of experience in some ways in terms of the vintage and a more compact kind of set of experiences in that case. And also it's I got it at a very reasonable price on one of these sales, so that'll probably be the next time I go to one of these, as I mentioned, kind of more compact RPGs.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing about Live Alive is that the more interesting chapters are kind of the initial ones, and then there's one that kind of ties it all together, and it's the most kind of classical, kind of most Dragon Quest-esque.
Yeah, now it's all leads up to the bit where it's actually an RPG, kind of thing.
Right, where like with random encounters, which the game didn't really have before then, and so it's kind of like, I guess we needed to go back to the basics, or to the thing that this was kind of in conversation with. I don't know, like trying to buck the trends.
It's the whole like, we subvert your expectations, but then we have to give you we have to play the hits at the end. For RPG players of that day. That I guess that was the thinking.
Yeah, but it's worth playing through. That last chapter, because it does tie everything together. Like it's very satisfying, but there's a little bit of RPG BS there. So I'll just leave it at that. But anyway, I'm just giving the impression they didn't enjoy the game. It was my favorite game.
I know, certainly. But that's the thing. I mean, it is nice with Super Mario RPG how much you can avoid battles. I mean, that's always been one of the nice things about it. And it's even more, because it's harder probably to be under-leveled in this version. Like, I was definitely pushing the envelope at times of like, I'm just, I could jump over these things. I can run around them. Like, I'm going to try and avoid a lot of this stuff. And that probably really just makes, again, the pace even more kind of brisk. So that is very nice, even though it doesn't quite have everything from latter Mario RPGs, like, the kind of gaining the initiative concept, whereas, if you jump on the enemy rather than them bumping into you, you kind of you do a little bit of damage and get the sort of first move, or it hadn't got there yet, but you see, so much of what would come in the latter games, certainly, in Paper Mario, like the way some of the special attacks work and all that, but also, kind of storytelling, stuff for Mario and Luigi, which obviously, having Shimomura always felt like it was more of the sort of heir to Super Mario RPG than Paper Mario, but also like the whole thing of like pantomiming things that, to kind of, Mario can't talk, but he can pantomime things to, explain, and sort of in substitute for Mario and Luigi, where the brothers would have their sort of, Italian gibberish gesturings and all that kind of thing. But in Super Mario RPG, you have the weird thing of him like just magically changing into other characters. So he's like Mystique from X-Men or something. You just forget how weird some of these things are.
His impressions are so convincing.
It's just dead on. It's almost like they're there. But yeah, you could see how they did a lot of the work that would go into, because I played, Superstar Saga before I played Super Mario RPG because of what I already mentioned. It was about 5 years before or something. So, for me, it was always like, oh yeah, no, they had a lot of this stuff in there already. They got a lot of things kind of right the first time, and the Alpha Dream kind of just picked up that and ran with it.
All right. Anything else?
Well, yeah, not a great deal else, I guess. I'll mention F-Zero 99 has got a non-99 update, essentially. There definitely was an issue of, kind of participation dropping off in the last few weeks. That was pretty apparent, even though I probably only would tend to play so much like the last couple of weeks on the weekend, when you might think participation would be at its highest when they do like more of the Grand Prix events and stuff. It was still like, there's a lot of AI cars coming in, to make up the numbers, and that does change how things play out. It just is not as chaotic. It does not feel the same. It's easier a lot of the time, to finish well, which, I guess is a good thing, but more to the point, it does kind of diminish the chaos, which is, I think, a lot of the appeal of F-Zero 99. But what their sort of adaptation to this is, yes, we're going to have an update which might get people to, kind of, look at the game again, but it's also like, well, no, let's actually sort of make it work at lower numbers. So what you have with this classic update is basically like, what if F-Zero Super Nintendo was online? So, like, the boost system is back to the way it was in F-Zero on Super Nintendo. The kind of spin attack is gone, but now it's 20 cars. If you played the Grand Prix modes and you get to the last race, that's sort of what it winnows down to. It's a 20-car race. So it's like, okay, that as standard on the tracks, which have therefore been kind of reverted to their Super Nintendo forms, because they don't have to have these sort of wider accommodations for the big number of cars anymore. And like I said, with that whole boost kind of mechanism and stuff. So, yeah, it at the moment, it's, and I presume this is how it will continue, it's just a sort of occasional thing, right? Like all these different things that rotate in and out, like Grand Prix, Mini Prix, Team Battle, Pro Tracks. It's just coming along as one of those, a classic race. But a couple of times that I've dipped into it so far, just in these few days, it's been, you basically, yes, you do get 20 human players, and then you play, and it's a very different experience, because of course, changing the way the boost system works in particular, you're much less at liberty to kind of undo a mistake or a misfortune especially if you're driving a car like the Fire Stingray, whose acceleration is shite. Then, if with only once per sort of lap boost that you can earn, then you don't have the liberty to just say, oh God, I've been reduced to, half my top speed and it'll take me forever to get back. Let me just use a bit of my health to get the boot. That's gone, so it's much more kind of, tense in a way, you know what I mean? It's less freewheeling into it's just like, no, it's more about racing fundamentals and stuff. So it definitely feels just like playing your classic F-Zero, but, you know, with a bunch of human players. So it's still kind of, you know, more chaotic, certainly. There's more things to happen. So yeah, I kind of like it at the moment. Certainly as something that's an option, you know, I mean, you still play the regular 99 modes and whatnot, but, it's a nice thing to have in there, and hopefully gin up a little bit of interest in it again, because certainly did seem to be waning. And then they've also got this odd thing where it's like, okay, it's encouraging you to essentially play 5 races a day. And if you do 5 races a day, it's kind of like you get some sort of like bingo card or something, and it's like based on where you finished, that like can, you know, and there's this like set of numbers that it corresponds to, that if it matches, like you get some little bit of a prize or something. It's weird. I don't
that is some very like Japanese shopping arcade, win a ticket every time you buy stuff at the drawing at the end of the day shit.
I guess so, yeah. I assume, yeah, this is a sort of some sort of adaptation of a practice that's tried and true elsewhere in some other context. But yeah, to me, it's just like, what are we doing? But I'm quite happy to play the game, you know, here and there anyway. So I guess it's just more other things. But no, it's you know, if you've looked at F-Zero 99 for any reason and thought, you know what, I don't know about how different it is from strictly Super Nintendo F-Zero, then, you know, you should like this, because it is just that, but with people instead of, you know, the computer cars in the old days.
All right, cool. Well, on that, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to do some of your listener mail, and I'll remind you to play the 7th guest. So stay tuned. We're back with listener mail, but first I'm going to delay the start of listener mail to remind you that you should be playing the 7th guest. Have I been playing the 7th guest? No, I need to start that. I'm going to start that this weekend. Like, I will probably stream a good chunk of that, but you won't hear this because that will have already happened by the time this episode comes out. Haha. But you should play the 7th guest, because we were thinking about maybe recording the retroactive next week, but it feels like that's not likely to happen. But soon thereafter, we will be recording it. We will be putting it away and releasing it later. So get your comments in. There is a Discord link. There is a TalkBack link. There is obviously RFN at NintendoWorldReport.com, which is also where the emails for this segment have originated. It's not a very long game. You can beat it in one sitting if you're really devoted. And you, maybe that's sitting. Also,
if you're good at, chess puzzle games.
If you really feel the compunction, or if you play the game on a toilet, I might help too, because, you know, sometimes.
Somehow I don't think you can finish that game in one sitting in the way that you mean.
Guillaume doubts you. Prove him wrong. Prove him wrong today.
I don't think it's recommended by your doctor.
I am recommending it.
Okay.
I am your doctor now. I am recommending it.
Did we have that in the Virtual Console recommendation scale? Recommended for everyone, recommended for fans, not recommended by your doctor. The final increment.
Recommended by your self-declared unlicensed doctor is where we're at on this one. So, go play the 7th guest. Don't move from your seat till you finish. And, you know, I hope you make it to the other side. You can post your comments and thoughts in the respective places. But we're going to do some email. And since I didn't have a new business, I figure I'll start the email off, because y'all have been avoiding my voice all day, and that's time to end. Ryan writes, "Hello all. I recently came across this mystery on Supper Mario Broth, which is a Twitter account, amongst other things. There's might be a site associated with it. And I was hoping you fine detectives could assist in solving a mystery of the ages. Simply put, is his word explain this, Kong?
Yeah, basically the title of the email was "Explain This Kong," and so the picture that accompanied the email is promotional material for Donkey Kong Land. Apparently, for months, like the ads would include this render of a Kong that we haven't seen before or since.
Thank God.
So we've been trying to identify the hat that he's wearing, but it's one of those things where like the more you try to reach for it, the more like it seems to disappear between your fingers.
I'm gonna go with it's a trilby with an extra floppy brim.
I guess, yeah, I suppose so. Although I found a 6-year-old Reddit thread where they were their theory was that it's some sort of helmet.
I mean, it doesn't feel like it has much in the way of structural integrity. It's two-peaked with a valley in the middle facing the front. There's no hard crease, so that eliminates things like a fedora. It does have a ribbon around at the base of the hat, but it's got a soft but somewhat floppy downward-facing brim. Also, it's fairly wide and round, so so there's so much wrong with this render that honestly, like, us focusing on the hat feels inappropriate.
Yeah, no, that's true. But like, I thought, so basically I focused on the hat at first, and my explanation was going to be that this is probably just like a denizen of Big Ape City, which is the one new kind of world that Donkey Kong Land has that the Super Nintendo games didn't have.
Is this the equivalent of New Donk City?
Well, that's kind of what I'm wondering. Like, I'm not sure, but like, let's not jump into the rabbit hole quite yet. Let's just.
Oh, okay. All right. So, all right. Let's talk about the hourglass figured Kong we're looking at, which is unusual.
I was gonna say, like, he definitely has actually an hourglass figure, which is weird because it seems like it kind of looks like his pecs are caved in.
They're like deflating. I think that's, and at first I thought it was shadow, but there's two different images we get of this Kong. One of them is from like if you're looking at it from the clock, like the 3 o'clock perspective, so it's not a direct on shot, and it definitely like cups in. It's like he tore a muscle and had really bad reconstructive surgery on it, so there's like a weird divot. There's a lot going on here. Like, his feet are also like weirdly indexed in, so like his legs are he's almost pigeon-toed, I guess. But like
right.
Like his feet are closer together than his hips, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Is probably the easiest way to describe it. So it's going to be a weird walk. Also, his fur on his upper body is definitely a shirt because it has sleeves that extend down to his hands that Guillaume has now cursed me with the comment from this Reddit thread of somebody saying they look like it's a baby.
Right.
And I say it looks like it's a naked baby doll because the arms and legs are outstretched in a way that babies don't really do. But it does look a lot like that. Like, there's the baby's head is inside the sleeves, and then it's the body and the arms and legs, and there's even a butt.
It's the weirdest thing, and you wouldn't notice it the first time. Like, if you were just like in passing, like you just look at it, you're like, yeah, this is just a really ugly Kong, and there's so much to distract you about this render, right? About this model that you don't immediately notice the hands. But then once you do, like, they're unlike the hands of any other Kong render that we've seen from that era.
I need to. So I am now on the Donkey Kong wiki.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm going to do the research right here. And I'm looking for I need a list of Kongs. There's a list of heroes. I don't want that. I want a list of Kongs.
Now, keep in mind, like, as we're doing the research in real time, that Super Mario Broth is a Twitter, is a Tumblr, but is most definitely, like, has done the research more than we could ever hope to do, especially in this short a time.
Yes,
so if this render is unexplained and unused, I think that, and if that's all the info that Super Mario Bros. gives. Like, that's probably most of the info that we have on this.
Sure. But I'm not so much interested in what information is available, or at least what information is canonically available, because this is not a Kong that exists in any game.
Right.
I just want to understand, like, what people have written about it. So there are Kongs that we haven't seen in games before, because I'm looking up his name, right? Uncle Kong. The Uncle Kong only exists in like a Japanese strategy guide somewhere.
Okay.
And he's got a tie that has UK on it, and he's wearing a big red jacket, and he's got like one of those thatch hats and weird like barbershop quartet mustache. It's fucked up. It's fucked up. And he literally only exists in some strategy guide or some shit. I've put him in the chat so you all can appreciate Uncle Kong.
I will say that seeing this image, it did bring back memories. It's not something that I thought about, but there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that I saw this in an ad for Donkey Kong Land at some point, and then had not thought about it in however many years since. And yeah, it's, one of these things where it just, what strikes you now, probably much more so than would have done then, even though I'm pretty, have vague recollection of being sort of perplexed at the time, is just this sort of, how sort of crudely deformed the render, that it very much seems like it's okay, we've got the render of Donkey Kong, and then, like, even more so than some of the other, pretty basic, shall we say, kind of repurposings of that render into, funky or whatever. This is just sort of crude and bizarre. Like, the face, the proportions are clearly kind of squashed down, as well as what you already mentioned about the body. It just seems like it's something that was done perhaps, very hastily and not by the same people that would presumably have done these things for, the manual, or so, like for Super Nintendo DKC, and somehow it was used in ads, but it's just bizarre.
But like,
it's as if like the designers for various, like, for the Super Nintendo game, like, and the Game Boy game, had been given the mission, the assignment. Okay, make new characters, but remember, making these models is expensive. Please take the model of Donkey Kong and do something with it.
Just mess with it.
Yeah, the Super Nintendo people, they took this assignment. They were like, well, easy. Like, we're going to give him shades. We're going to give him a bandana. Bam. Like, we've got Funky Kong. The Game Boy guy was just like, had no idea. What, mess with this? What am I supposed... I guess I could... use this like slider here, and just ended up giving this Kong this malnutrition looking, look to it. And I've got this render of like dolls, baby dolls, and like that's his hands now. Like, basically just like fumbling his way into making a new render. That's absolutely horrifying, to be honest.
So this is Donkey Kong Land 2, correct?
No, it's the first one.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So so I'm going to give you an idea here of the degree to which Donkey Kong Land games really cared.
Are you going to read from the manual?
I'm going to read from the Donkey Kong fandom wiki.
Okay.
About Donkey Kong Land 2. Oh. Apparently, the Donkey Kong Land 2's manual contained a lot of errors and appeared to be entirely copied from the instruction booklet for Donkey Kong Country 2. And then there's a list of like 15 bullet points, including mentions of the Y button. Because again, they copied it from a different game on a different system. I'm going to go ahead and say Donkey Kong Land, not exactly receiving the maximum amount of attention that they might have deserved. What's weird though, or a lot's weird here. Like, this is a disturbing Kong. So I found it. They simply refer unnamed Kong wearing a hat dubbed Fedora Kong.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, why did they make him? Like, what was the only thing I could think of is that it was cut content. Like, there was originally going to be another Kong in this game, and they just didn't use it. Because there's no reason for them to have created this render. It serves no purpose.
Right.
And and to your point, it would have taken a lot of effort to produce something this bad.
Mm-hmm.
But they did it, and it was just like, well, we have it. We have the asset. Or it's entirely possible the people making the ad didn't know what assets were cut and not. They just had the assets, and they're like, well,
yeah, here's a bunch of stuff, and it's like, oh, that guy is interesting.
I don't know. Like, I can maybe like they were making the game. They were kind of delusional about what the Game Boy could handle, and they were thinking like, well, like we're gonna have the final stages are gonna be in Big Ape City, and there's gonna be other apes going around.
So there are a number of unused assets in that ad.
Mm-hmm.
There's an enemy named Pucka, which is a fish, that is not in the game, and then there is an animal buddy named Rambunctious.
Yeah, he's very cute.
that is also not in the game. So I'm guessing that this ad was produced away from the game itself, and that the content in the game, like they just had access to all the assets that were created early on,
mm-hmm.
and like they created these assets, they created these renders, because you'd have to create them super early because they're going to take forever to render. And of course, the whole concept of this game is you create the renders,
and then you make the sprites based off
right.
them. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Right. So if they created the renders for all these, you basically would say create the renders for every character you think we might want to have, and then we'll pick the ones we want as we design the levels. It's entirely possible these 3 characters were meant to be in the game and just weren't. And
mm-hmm.
Nintendo, or whoever produced the ad, had all the render assets. Like, they were just sent a folder with all that shit in it. And they're just like, yeah, these ones, let's throw them in there. Let's go. Got them. Here's Pucka. Here's Rambunctious. Here's weird fucking Kong with his arms too high on his shoulders, even for a gorilla.
It's worth mentioning, I suppose, that to put this into context for the time, like what I can recall again from reading the magazines around at that time, how they advertised Donkey Kong Country itself was like a 2-page spread that was like a solid yellow, and the only thing on it was basically just the render of DK. That was it. It was like, okay, this is all you need. This is so mind-blowing. We don't need screenshots. We don't need anything else. And then it was just some sort of blurb about, it's taken all this, and it just has a sort of word vomit of stats of Silicon Graphics workstations, how much computing power they possessed to make him look this gruesome or something. I forget exactly what the punchline was, but that was it. There was nothing, no screenshots, they didn't really have much to do with the actual game. It was just, sort of techno supremacy nonsense. But so right. that is the kind of, obviously it's different. He was the main character, so there's no way he could get cut. That's playing it nice and safe. But the point is, like, that's how divorced some of this stuff was from the actual game. So it's not that hard to imagine, someone at some point, like you said, having, a menu, an assortment of, these pre-rendered assets to make an ad from, and it turns out, they're not actually anchored by anything in the game.
Yeah, the two characters that I mentioned earlier, they were actually in a Nintendo Power spread. So, like, they really should have known whether or not that stuff was going to be in there. But, the hype cycle for these games, because there wasn't the internet, the hype cycle for these games was driven by the print media timeline, which meant you probably had to get stuff in the press 3-4 months before the game was going to come out. And I'm going to guess this game's development cycle was not very long.
Well, so actually, the development started before the Donkey Kong Country was released, and it was about a year.
Yeah, so like if they were in the Nintendo Power, let's say 3 months before the release, or even 2 months before the release. The assets would have to be there 3 months before the release, which could be well before they've decided to cut that character. But then again, like, we're talking about, like, oh, this fucking terrible Kong. Like, it's so bad compared to the other. This is the same series as Candy Kong. So, like
yeah, and that's a whole different kind of bad, because it's not really like a repurposed one, is it? Like, that's not a funky situation. No. That's like, or like Dixie and Diddy, even. It's a sort of unique model. It's just uniquely awful. Whereas this is a uniquely awful adaptation or deformation of the Donkey Kong model.
and you might actually be using the right word. They might literally have gone and deformed the model.
Oh, that's so what it looks like. I'd be astonished if that wasn't essentially what's happening.
Like, that might actually be the name of the command they were using, though. Like, in the rendering tool, because there are definitely, you know, I've done some 3D graphics. There's definitely like tools called deform that essentially create the kind of divots you're seeing in his pecs. That they may have said, well, this isn't Donkey Kong. He's not meant to be big and buff. So let's take some of those proportions in. Take his arms in. Take his chest in. And in taking his chest in, they gave him chest holes, which they look like they're airports, so they can get more air in to cool his underpits. I don't know. It's fucking weird. He's got a snatched waist. Like, this is terrible. I hate this Kong.
Maybe the designer was a big pottery fan. And that's how this guy came into being.
It looks like they pushed 2 thumbs in and like, there we go. Did it.
Yep.
Because he's definitely more svelte than the Donkey Kong model of that era.
Yeah. So I hinted at a rabbit hole. Like, do you know the story of Donkey Kong Land? It's a fourth wall breaking, basically.
Good.
Yeah.
It's not a story the Jedi would tell you.
It takes place after the events of Donkey Kong Country, where Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong discuss their latest adventure, the Cranky Kong. Cranky Kong admits that the game was more successful than he thought it would be, but claimed that it was only because of the fancy graphics and that kids will buy anything nowadays.
He was right.
Yeah, and so DK and Diddy try to convince Cranky that it's because Donkey Kong Country was just plain fun. And so Cranky challenges Donkey and Diddy to an adventure on the Game Boy. And so they make a bet, and then K. Rool steals the banana horde. And anyway.
All right.
I guess he was going to steal the banana horde anyway, but
just timing worked out.
Yeah.
So I want to go ahead and start a side conversation here at this point.
Okay.
Most passive-aggressive internal story to a game about, I can't believe we're having to make this fucking game.
We've talked about New Super Mario Bros. 2 as a bit of that going
was the
on.
tie-in.
Yeah.
Like, this feels very like Rare's B Team was given a task and they're like, fuck.
This is very overt, isn't it? This is, explicitly sort of resentful.
Yeah. Nintendo called Rare and they're like, we need a Game Boy game.
We made a game that was a huge hit and, is basically going to be the decisive moment in the 16-bit console war in North America. And our reward for this is to be forced to put a Game Boy version out that is going to be inherently fucking sucky. I could kind of understand how they got there.
No, but like this and New Super Mario Bros. 2 definitely both seem to be, the development team is probably not the A team because they would have been on the next Donkey Kong Country game.
Oh yeah, they didn't mess about, did they? I mean, Diddy's Conquest was the following year.
It's just like the New Super Mario Brothers U had the A team, and they're like, we're gonna put this other group in here to learn how to make Mario games. This is very much like, I can't believe we have to fucking do this shit.
I guess I closed the tab, but I think Wikipedia has a surprising amount of information about the genesis of the game. Actually, I don't think that the programmer was all that sad about working on a Game Boy version. I think he proposed it, but I guess I need to find the tab again.
But the designers might not have been thrilled about it. Just because somebody proposed it doesn't mean the rest of the team's like, oh yeah, we're going to be working on the Game Boy. The rest of the team's got these high-powered rendering engines to put to use to make a Super Nintendo game. Us, 8 bits and no color. Smeary-ass screen, because we're still dealing with basically really early Game Boy screens.
Yeah, I mean, how many people even had Game Boy Pockets when Donkey Kong Land came out? I mean, you're talking about it's generally just that original model that is going to be in most of the players' hands at this point, which, yeah, I mean, the smearing with, this type of graphics, where it's, kind of, essentially you got a lot more kind of detail than the system can really kind of cope with, that you're down-resing, these sprites based on the renders. I can only imagine just how kind of difficult to pass that the game was when playing on that original hardware.
And I remember stories about Rare of that era where they basically had the 2 barns that had the 2 teams in them. And it was like they weren't allowed to know what the other team was working on, to create that sense of competition, which now probably feels like a really bad business plan and feels like it's maybe not great for your team morale. But there were definitely people in the Donkey Kong Land team who would have been working on the same group as Donkey Kong Country, because they were sharing assets in a way. Looking at what those guys were doing and then looking at the smeary ass shit they had on their development unit and thinking, fuck, this sucks. And I can hear the art team from the Donkey Kong Country coming by to look at what they're doing. Oh, let's take a look at. All right, buddy, good luck, and just walking off.
I don't know. The game was kind of impressive looking back then for the Game Boy, and the game it was well received for its graphics.
For a Game Boy game, it is really impressive. But if you're looking at what I would imagine was probably the nicest looking version of the Super Nintendo games on development hardware.
Sure.
It was probably a little bit of a downer to be on, if you're an artist, to be on that one and not on the main project. But yeah, that story definitely tells at least a certain amount of passive aggressiveness.
Oh, and also, I gotta say, I mean, I've mentioned this a few times, and I've played DKC, on Super Nintendo, on Virtual Console, on Super Nintendo Mini, Super Nintendo Online, all that stuff. Every time I go back to that, it feels a little bit cramped. The visible play area.
Oh yeah,
on definitely. Super Nintendo.
Right.
So,
yeah. I'm not gonna defend Donkey Kong Land for sure. I could not stand it. Basically, I discovered it on the 3DS eShop, and I wish I had never played it. Basically,
no, I just that always that was something that kind of, because I didn't occur to me so much of that about DKC when I played it, for Christmas in '94. But latterly, it's like, this is kind of cramped, isn't it? And because obviously it was a real issue with stuff like when you play the GBA versions of Super Nintendo games, and they had a lower resolution. So, it became kind of a kind of common thing that I'd look for, I guess. And it's like, obviously you go back to Super Nintendo DKC, it's not that, but it does feel a little bit tight, and it does kind of explain why it's so aggressive with the banana breadcrumbing. It's always like, just trust the banana kind of trails. You don't need to see that far in front of you, because you can't see that far. That is the way that all kind of balanced out. So yeah, at that point, having played the games later and kind of observed that more clearly about it, the notion of GB adaptations of it really tickled me. It's like, God, they did that? That's so silly. But there it is.
And Lord. I just wanted to end on this. Have you heard of, God damn it, now I closed that tab. Rumble in the Jungle. Donkey Kong Land Rumble in the Jungle. So it doesn't explain this, our Trilby or Fedora guy, but it is a novel set in the world of Donkey Kong Land. It doesn't touch on the whole Super Nintendo game selling well or anything like that, but
oh God, it's Tattletbomb. Jesus. All right, so this man,
this is the Gex thing, right?
Yeah, no, not just Gex. He wrote so many fucking video game based books. Like so many fucking video game. It's out of control. So if you just click on him in the Super Mario wiki, he wrote a Donkey Kong Country book, which is a novelization of the game, which feels fucking unbelievable. Yep. He wrote Rumble in the Jungle, which is pure ass fan fiction. And then he wrote another one called Rescue on Crocodile Isle, which again is fan fiction. He then also is responsible for How to Draw Donkey Kong and Friends and How to Draw Nintendo Heroes and Villains. But this absolute literary terrorist has produced so many books. And yes, I believe he is responsible for, like, he does a lot of adaptions. So he wrote a bunch of like Avatar books and Little Mermaid and like other random shit. I think he wrote like a book about a novelization of fucking Clue. But I do believe he is responsible for the absolutely godless Gex novel. And that's really the only way to describe it. Like, the Gex novel is something that comes from a world that has no God. Because it's just, yeah, he wrote this fucking, I'm holding it now. Yeah, he wrote this fucking thing. Like, it's just, oh dear God, it's so bad. Like, I've strongly considered just like recording a chapter and just sticking at the end of episodes every week just to make y'all experience it. Because there's one paragraph that's nothing but onomatopoeia.
I've heard the opening lines, and yeah, it breaks you pretty fast.
I made John listen to me read it for like an hour while we were playing Smash Brothers one time, and he was so mad. He was so mad.
When you say like there's a page that's just onomatopoeia, that's what you mean? Like ouch, oof,
for like a paragraph? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a nightmare. It's absolutely impossible to read. He's still at it. He wrote a little golden book about Grumpy Cat. Jesus, we are still here. This man can't be stopped. He's got to be one of the most prolific, and I'm going to use this word knowing full well it's not correct, authors. Mm-hmm. According to Amazon, this man is responsible for 322 distinct titles. And every single one of them is licensed. What an absolute machine. Just not in a good way. Just.
So if the question was not explain this Kong, but instead name this Kong, are we going to call it, what was it? Titlebound Kong? Is that what we're going to call this?
Yes. I like it.
I can't remember which one of you two said Disaster of a Kong, but yeah, Disaster Kong sounds pretty good too.
The other DK. The other DK, because Diddy.
Is he going to fall in a lava pit? Is that what's going to happen to him? Because that would be an improvement, honestly. Maybe that's why he's all deformed like that. Maybe he was briefly in a lava pit, but unlike Ray, his friends actually rescued him. Oh my God. Like, I'm just going through his entire literary, I don't even know if there's a word to describe what this is.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the word we want here. Absolutely. I can read too. Batman. Good. I'm glad you can read as well. Also. The novelization of America's Tale, Fievel Goes West. Great. Perfect. I don't need anything else in my, oh my God, the novelization of fucking Tonka trucks. I can't. Get me out of here. Someone read the next email for the love of God.
Okay, David writes, hey RFN crew, we are coming up on a year since the state of Platinum Games was discussed on the show. They are back in the news due to their quote-unquote beloved founder, Hideki Kamiya, announcing his sudden departure from the studio. Kamiya was the director of their currently in development Project GG, leaving the state of that project unknown. What do you think the future of Platinum Games is? Do you see them being acquired? How do you personally feel about their catalogue? Thanks, and keep on keeping on.
Project GG as in get gone.
I'm
going to ask a really difficult question. And it is not to belittle Platinum. in any way. I want to make that perfectly clear. How many properties do they actually own?
Yeah, that's been the thing, hasn't it? They've been on this sort of quest to try and have something, it feels like, that would be, something of theirs that could become a sustainable series, but they haven't necessarily had, that much kind of success with it. And then, obviously they've also had, things where it's like, okay, to get this game made, you have to kind of have funding from an outside party, like with Bayonetta, like Sega. Obviously that was a product of their deal with Sega. And so Sega continues to have, ownership of, at least in part of that property. But then when Sega wouldn't fund, subsequently for sequels, then, well, you have to go shop somewhere else. And then Nintendo, comes in and kind of makes it possible to have Bayonetta 2 and 3 and Origins and all that. But so, either way, it seems like they're reliant on other people, whether it's to, use a brand or it's just to get the thing funded in the first place. That's their kind of place, generally. So yeah, I guess I assume the whole Project GG thing was kind of the latest attempt of something that would be theirs, right. that could put, they would be able to, directly and fully capitalize on the success of, if they could make it a success. And, obviously at this juncture, with no idea, what form that it will take, if it will still see completion or all that. But, they had a new executive come in, before Kamiya left, didn't they? From the Nintendo side, right? Like someone who had worked at Nintendo, I want to say.
I believe that is correct, yes.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's, that situation, in terms of having a new executive come in from the outside, and, there was some kind of, disagreements or butting of heads about, what the sort of direction they were going to go in the future, and now he's out. And, this email was sent, last month or whatever, but, just recently, Kamiya, I think he's sort of vaguely kind of following it's quite different. I'm sure it will be quite different because I think it's only just started, but I guess he's vaguely going in the path of Sakurai, of having a YouTube channel. I believe I've not seen this video, but I think he had some kind of broadcast or something, a post where he was talking about how, he still had this like vision for, where the Bayonetta series would have gone, but now he's, it's just going to follow him to the grave or whatever, and, how he'd still like to kind of, possibly hook on, with Capcom to follow up some of the Clover stuff, that they haven't followed up on, like, Beautiful Joe and Okami. So, yeah, he's saying stuff, but, I guess, it's probably not going to shed a great deal of light on where Platinum are headed at this point.
So, I think, of the original founding, leadership, I think Atsushi Inaba is probably the only one that's still around at this point. Now, I mean, they just I guess about a year ago now, opened another studio in Fukuoka. So, like, there is at least some degree of they're investing in themselves. They did buy back the rights to Wonderful 101. They made Soul Cresta, which I believe they own. They published a few games, which they had never done before, including Soul Cresta. But yeah, Kamiya left in October. There was a CEO transition to Inaba, who had been there since the beginning and was, one of Kamiya's partners in founding the studio. But yeah, they did bring in, a new executives, and one of them was from Nintendo, but also, like, they've got a number of investors. Tencent has some investment in them. I would speculate, although I don't know that this is the case, Nintendo probably has some based on their history together. It may not be ownership stakes, but invested resources, invested time. Like, they may view that they've got something there. I mean, the tricky part is, I don't know what acquiring them gets you. It's a higher acquisition, I guess. Like, we're just really doing this for the head count. But we've talked about like hiring versus setting up a new studio and just stealing people and the complexities that come with that. It came up during the conversation around Next Level. The problem is that Next Level was effectively already an integrated piece of the Nintendo ecosystem, and Platinum isn't.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they've had some fairly notable, kind of situations developing for the other, for other platforms outside Nintendo, Nier, Automata, being a pretty prominent example of something I assume did quite well commercially and critically. For one of their games, and then there was was it Scalebound, the thing that was going to be for Microsoft that never happened in the end, so yeah, they've not been there. Whereas Next Level, I mean, it's just like, no, they just they just made stuff for Nintendo at a certain point. I mean, I think there were a few other things in the sort of aughts maybe. That they did make some kind of terrible Transformers license game, or I might be conflating them with someone else.
They did.
Yeah.
So yeah, they weren't. It took a while, but eventually it was just a case of, look, we are essentially an exclusive kind of studio for Nintendo sort of projects, and it makes they were able to obviously convince Nintendo that it just made sense to essentially preserve the status quo by acquiring them rather than really changing anything, probably and that would not really be the case with Platinum and Nintendo. No. It's not that close, which reminds me, I think there was a recently kind of discussed for the first time sort of publicly that like there's a division of Namco that exists strictly to work with Nintendo. Like
yes.
It's just a development team that has obviously we know they've had a bunch of high profile collaborations, and like there it's just like a publicly known, like there's this team within Namco Bandai that they're the guys that work with Nintendo projects. So again, that's obviously become a very kind of standardized, kind of regularized arrangement that they have there. But obviously, Bandai Namco much more sort of a sprawling company than Platinum in terms of number of developers, a number of different interests. So yeah, a bit of a different situation, but it goes to show you the kind of, close collaborations that Nintendo can have with outside, companies, to the point that, they've got dedicated, teams, within their corporate structure just to work with Nintendo. But, like I said, Platinum, it's never got that close. Even though they've, stuff like Star Fox and, at one point maybe Wonderful 101 could have had like Nintendo characters and stuff, but it's just, it's not become that direct.
No, they financed a lot of projects though, which definitely has probably helped that studio stay afloat. The Yamane is the vice president that came in. Former managing director and developer liaison at Nintendo. So it's pretty obvious how he got in the door. He was a developer liaison, which means he would have been working with Platinum quite a bit, which probably helped establish the relationship. And then when they needed to essentially fill that void with the promotion of Inaba into the CEO chair, who do we know that can be an outside voice to, that's... It's good to bring in outside voices sometimes, especially with an insular company like that. Like, bring in some outsiders who can give you some expectation, who can help explain what's going on, and can go like, hey guys, why do you do this thing? This very weird thing that you're doing. Or can, basically call you out on your bullshit.
I might be conflating this with something else, but you mentioned just then about the whole thing of them kind of reacquiring Wonderful 101, as their own, so they could do the multi-platform release with the crowdfunding and all that kind of stuff. But I seem to remember, was there something about the kind of quid pro quo there? Was it like Nintendo got like more ownership of Astral Chain? Was that the trade there or something? I forget.
I don't know. Yeah, but like I know Nintendo is effectively the owner of Astral Chain.
I was just trying to remember if that was a case of like, yeah, you know, again, Astral Chain was something maybe that they saw that could be more theirs than some of their previous, like, you know, kind of successes. And then as it turned out, they ended up trading that for Wonderful 101. I don't know. I don't know.
Getting traded for a cartoon character.
Yes. The Lucky Rabbit, Oswald. But no, I'm sorry. I don't, Rick. This is just coming out of my head right now. I hadn't thought about this in a while. But yeah, it like I said, it does feel like it's been a bit of a struggle, you know, an ongoing kind of struggle to kind of find something that's more, you know, that they could directly profit off. And God knows where Bayonetta, you know, I know Kamiya's, you know, why he had a vision for it and all this kind of stuff, but I'm not sure where that'll go. First of all, it isn't really, in some ways, it's like, seems like it's a blessing and a curse, because it's, on the one hand, it is one of their things that they've been able to keep making and have it be, at least, you know, not a huge success, but it's in, you know, clearly Bayonetta 2 was successful enough, probably especially after it was on Switch, to kind of have a third game and have a spin-off game. But at the same time, it's not theirs. So, you know, they don't get the kind of full rewards on that either. So it's probably not, it's nice for them to have an association with a character that gets to be in Smash Brothers and that has a certain amount of mind share, but it's not great for it to be something that isn't all together, you know, on a you know, corporate level there. So yeah, and then if you're trying to kind of branch out from that, which I don't know where, you know, they might be even more desperate to branch out than ever after, you know, obviously, I mean, look, we all knew Bayonetta Origins was going to sell horribly. And he did, right. You know, I mean, and it's a good game. I like that game a lot. It's really, really good. I mean, kind of what it tries to do, even if it's not like the most ambitious thing in the world. But it was always going to be a dog in terms of sales. It was never going to perform well. It just, that to me is very strange. Everyone involved, Nintendo has to bear some responsibility as well. You know, they obviously, you know, are involved there, and it's like, where is thinking that this will sell? I have no idea. But even Bayonetta 3 didn't seem like it was necessarily that, like, kind of warmly received entirely. So I do wonder, you know, what their kind of approach will be in terms of recalibrating from here. You know, perhaps, you know, it leaves it more than ever to try and find something that's original.
So you are probably right on Astral Chain. What it came down to is, at some point the copyright for it changed to be just Nintendo, and Inaba confirmed that Nintendo now has full ownership, but, quote, not at liberty to discuss the change. So, I mean, it could have been something like the contract stipulated if it doesn't move X number of units, we get more ownership as a consequence to make up the difference. I don't know. Yeah,
it might not have been an actual trade with the Wonderful 101 thing. Maybe it was just a contingency unto itself. So, yeah. But I mean, to be fair, Astral Chain sold about as well as the Bayonetta games have. You know, like without the character that's in Smash Brothers, and, you know, some of that mindshare that goes with all the, you know, the game being on Xbox and PS3 back in the day and all that. Like, so, you know, they're modest. You know, for things that Nintendo is putting out, you're talking about modest numbers. You're talking about, like, just getting above 1 million some odd, isn't it? Kind of stuff, which they have things that do worse, as we know. Your Tokyo Mirage sessions both times, your Famicom Detective Club, but it is at the lower end naturally.
It's 2020 end of 2022. It was at about 1.3 million units, which on most systems in Nintendo's lifespan, it's pretty good. On Switch, it's like, oh, that's garbage, and that's. It's not true. It's just the matter that the Switch has created this opportunity for games to sell much crazier numbers. And this is the unfortunate reality of, we're not going to, like, not every game is going to be a 20 million seller. I'm sorry. I think at this point you have to be in the 10 millions to even break the top 10.
Oh, I would have thought so. Yeah, no, absolutely.
So, you know, there is a certain amount of that. Like, if they did need to get acquired, which is not something that I think anybody really wants to do right now, like you would have to assume that Nintendo is a candidate, but I don't know that they offer. I don't know what they offer. Like, because you're not going to get any IP of any meaningful value, and if you're just after the people, just grab the people. Like, let it flounder, and then go, hey. I guess what you get is the name.
Yeah. And like I said, they do seem to have attached, a certain amount of like, okay, this Platinum Games and you got to think specifically the Bayonetta name has some sort of cachet that they thought they could trade off by getting that as an exclusive for Wii U, which of course, I mean, by the time it arrived, the Wii U was already dead, just completely, in the ground. Excellent game. Really, really good game. But like it wasn't going to do anything for, there was nothing that could be done for that system at that point. And then, still, okay, let's have the first two games on Switch, and then eventually, I get they made a point to have like a very, very early, almost, certainly Prime 4 has comfortably lapped it in this contest by this point, but it was almost Prime 4-esque of just this super way too early teaser, before we spent years wondering, what was going on with Bayonetta 3 before it eventually emerged. And, I liked it, even though I wouldn't say I didn't think it was as good as 2, but at the same time, if you just tried to do 2 again, you were probably going to come up short that way, and it wouldn't be any different. So, but certainly some of the things you hear suggest that there was some, kind of, dead ends that they went down with the development of 3, maybe trying to make it, bigger environments and more open. And then they kind of reined it back in, but still, with a different kind of focus, with all this kind of like kaiju scale, like combat going on as well, alongside the more normal kind of scale. But yeah, to me, I've enjoyed a lot of the stuff that they've produced. I enjoyed it. Again, wouldn't say Astral Chain was like entirely successful along all the kinds of ambitions that it had, because it had quite a lot of ambitions. It was quite obvious that, okay, well, our games maybe have a limited appeal because they're more like, condensed, it's just action. It can't last that long. It can't have that involved a story. So how can we kind of leverage, our kind of character action combat into a game that has like some of the trappings of other genres that are more popular, and have a more kind of expansive kind of story and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know whether it was entirely successful, but I still enjoyed it. I still feel there was a lot of quality work going on with that. And I enjoyed Star Fox Zero. A lot of people absolutely hate it. And you could somewhat understand why, because the control scheme is not going to endear itself to everyone. But and again, a lot of that stuff is what Nintendo wanted. I mean, the Platinum.
They built the game they were asked for.
They already had a sort of spec, the demos and things that Nintendo before they went developer shopping, and Platinum ended up doing it. But I don't think even for the people that don't like the game, I don't think that's really an issue of Platinum coming up short there. But it's a bit of a fool's errand trying to attribute, blame/credit from the outside anyway. But the point is, they've had some very fruitful collaborations that I've enjoyed. So I would hope that they could keep going and keep collaborating with Nintendo, certainly. But I guess, the question is, is that going to be the best sort of niche for them, the most sustainable kind of niche for them? It could be, but also we've seen sometimes, some kind of relationships that Nintendo's had, some of them next level where it just seems to get tighter and tighter, and then eventually they're purchase. But like Nintendo are quite reluctant to purchase. We've already touched on Rare. The Stamper brothers were ready to cash out, and Nintendo were like, nah, we'll sell it to someone else. We'll sell our half essentially to someone else. We won't buy you. And some of their, at one time were quite consistent and close collaborators. You think of people like Monster Games or even Good Feel. It just stops. at a certain point.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, good feel, you know, it's been since Yoshi's Crafted World, really, which is quite a few years now, and they're off making, you know, a sort of Goemon spiritual successor, because a lot of those developers made Goemon games at Konami before they left, you know, rather like, you know, the people leaving leaving Capcom to form Platinum. You know, and that was like, for a decade, it's like, oh, yeah, we've got Wario Land, Shake It, we've got Kirby's Epic Yarn, we've got Yoshi's Woolly World, Yoshi's Crafted World, we've got some support stuff in the middle with Street Pass games and Mario & Luigi games and all that. And then all of a sudden, I mean, there's no sign of it really sort of rekindling at the moment. So, yeah, you can't take this stuff for granted either, I don't think. And I think it would be a shame, having enjoyed the games, but I think it's quite possible that, you know, especially if it comes down to there is another party that's needed or something like that, you know, it could happen. But at the same time, having that developer liaison, you know, move over to be an executive on their side, you think has got to, you know, say that some people in the company sort of see that, you know, on some level, maybe that's where their bread is going to be buttered in the future.
Yeah, I don't know. It's, or at the very least, like, hey, we want to have an in, or we have an in, and now we want to bring that person in closer, or maybe it's just a statement of like, these are the projects he's worked on as a Nintendo liaison have been the ones that have been lucrative for us. So let's, cause it does feel like they go through like a primary partner. Like, you know, there was a stretch where Sega was their primary partner. Then there was a stretch where it was Activision. And now it's been in this Nintendo stretch. And this Nintendo stretch has been very sustained. But I mean, honestly, they might just say like, we'd rather just close up shop than, like, I don't know that they're in a dire straits or anything. Like, they're, I mean, like I said, they expanded a year ago. It's just, yeah, they've lost some of their creative voices. Shinji Mikami left a long time ago. And they survived that. And Shinji Mikami's incredibly talented. He's produced many, many games, some that you probably aren't even realizing he worked on. Looking at you, Goof Troop. But he left and they were okay. Like, there's no reason to think that, you know, losing another creative lead is going to kill the company. It may be, well, it's entirely possible that, look, he's got a little bit of an abrasive personality. It's possible that maybe he just needed to move on. Maybe they needed him to move on.
Well, no, I don't think, I mean, again, it's a little bit outside my sphere, but I don't think he covered himself in glory with that whole the voice acting, kerfuffle that they got themselves in. With,
like,
with these, you know, again, I don't know about the, you know, internal stuff within the company, but certainly outside, he liked to present himself as an abrasive character, like very demonstratively, you know, so, and then, you know, at a certain point, you know, that perhaps there's a worry that in itself could lead to, you know, to affect sales or to affect the image of the company, you know, reputation, all that can be very important, you know, to other people in the company feel like he's, you know, kind of, representing them when he's out there talking about stuff. So,
I mean, he was the public face. But I mean, like Sega went through this relatively recently with Nagoshi. He was the public face of Sega in many ways, which is really funny because he came out of the Yakuza team. Now, obviously, he's worked in other things, but that was
the Super Monkey Ball era. Yeah,
yeah. But as he increasingly started to dress like a member of a Yakuza organization,
is there such a thing as method producing?
I don't know, but he got very weird. But he was like the face of their monthly TV show where they talked about stuff that was coming on and had guests and things, and he was doing interviews. He was quite literally the face of the company in Japan in many ways, and then he's just gone. He's like, I'm out. I got to deal.
He got poached, right?
Yeah, I got to deal with the Chinese now. Peace. And they're putting out more Yakuza than God ever intended. They just dropped a spin-off and they've got, quote, the largest game ever. And it's like, no, that wasn't ever the problem with the series. That was never the problem. What are you doing? And it's, yeah, I mean, it's you can survive losing creative leads, and sometimes you just need to leave a place. Like you're just you're tired, and you want to go somewhere else. And those guys have been at it over at Platinum for pretty much nonstop for a while now. Like maybe this was for him. Maybe this wasn't about the company's future. Maybe this was his personal future. Like, I'm burned out. I'm tired. I need to get out. And so, like, leaving a project in flight, maybe it was a good time. Like, it's easy to say, like, he was on the project, but maybe the project had the right people in handling it. And he's like, yeah, I can step away now. This is my time to get out there and do something else. Get some air and take it easy for a while.
Well, this, you also broach in the usual sort of pitfalls of, we don't know what the next Nintendo console is going to be and when it's going to come along and all this kind of stuff. Right. But as I said, Nintendo has demonstrated a sort of, I think, a kind of liking for having, Platinum as part of the kind of portfolio for for things that people can expect to see on the system in the future. With the last two, with the Wii U and the Switch, it certainly would be no shock if it's whether it's literally Bayonetta or something else, of just like, oh yeah, we've got the full range of experiences coming to this thing, because, alongside this, that, and the other, here's, some Platinum action game that's going to be really, sort of slick and flashy and everything. Like that seems to be something that goes a little bit beyond just like, oh yeah, it's going to get us another million seller. Like that isn't really the point as far as I can tell. It's some kind of, I don't know whether I'd say prestige is quite the right word, but certainly something with perception of like, we have a well-rounded, kind of, software lineup coming for this thing. It isn't all just, us and people that make games exactly like what we make already. And that kind of thinking is what got them fucking Devil's Third as well. So God. It could take you some bad places if you're in bad situations like they were with Wii U, but, it's also, I think the Platinum experience, you can take you some nice places as well.
All right, Guillaume, do you want to read our last email?
Adolf Vega writes, will a new 3D Zelda game, new engine from Breath of the Wild / Tears of the Kingdom, be released before January 1st, 2030? 2030? Yeah. Would you rather eat a Decunut cream-filled donut or a Hestu's Hot Korok chocolate latte?
Die is the answer to that question. That's my third choice. None of the above.
Anything to do with Hestu? No. No. Death
before dishonor on that one.
Like, I just, would I rather eat a donut filled with the cream of a sentient being or Hestu's potentially, fecal matter in hot chocolate form? I guess that's the joke, because Hestu's, like the reward that you get. Yeah. Okay. Neither. Thank you. I'll starve. So will we get a new 3D Zelda game with a new engine before January 1st, 2030?
So, and it's weird. New engine from, I guess he was saying like using the quote new engine from those games. I don't know. Or maybe saying a new engine or reusing.
Yeah, Adolf Vega is from Italy. Maybe.
Yeah.
It has a little bit of trouble with the prepositions, like I do.
Let's just say that we'll just cut that parenthetical out and say, will there be a new 3D Zelda game before January 1st, 2030? So that would make it 6 and some change from the release of Tears of the Kingdom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which was itself basically the same unit of I assume that's why it's been identified, right. Because it's that length of time from Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom. So
I'm guessing, like, if something comparable to like Link's Awakening were to come out, we wouldn't count that. That's not what he's asking about.
Oh yeah, definitely not that. That's for sure. I guess the question is, does it have to be something that's kind of as significant a kind of change as Breath of the Wild was, because it's like a new engine, or just, something that's, in the same lineage as Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom.
I'm willing to say a new 3D game. And that's sufficient. Whatever lineage it falls in.
I like I said, in some ways, 2030 does seem really far off. So you might immediately think, well, yeah, but, like I said, when you consider the length of time between Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and, the fact that's the same system, whereas, we're going to be, going into another system by the time we get the next 3D Zelda, and whatever that entails in terms of the graphics engine or the technology, it's clearly going to be far more of a sort of change than it was with the two that are both on Switch.
Right.
It isn't as clear cut as it might at first seem, but I would still have to think yes. Also, just because, this, we talked about a little bit, just then about with Platinum, like you need to have like this kind of set of, experiences that people are looking for on your next console or all that. A 3D Zelda is definitely part of that. Now, of course, it will not be as it was on Switch, a day one thing. I think we can already rule that out pretty comfortably. We don't know how soon at hand the next system is, but it's going to be soon enough that there is not going to be you're turning around another mammoth, big honking 3D Zelda for launch day. But would it be so far in the distance? What could we be talking about here? 5 years into the console's life, either? That seems unlikely to me. I don't think you're going to have to wait 5 years into the Switch successor's life to get the 3D. It could happen because they do end up delaying these things. They do end up running into development kind of issues because sometimes, it's very ambitious or it takes different directions. It's not out of the question, believe me, but I've got to think certainly the plan and the probable execution would say yes.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. Like it is not unthinkable that we could get to the second holiday without a new Zelda game, because Nintendo's probably got a new Mario game.
You got to think that 3D Mario's got is the thing that's out there, isn't it? It's like, okay, we just did side-scrolling Mario, we just did 3D Zelda. What's left over is 3D Mario. That's probably going to be, a big, whether it's not necessarily launch, like you said, it could be the first holiday, just as Odyssey was for Switch, but that is going to hold down a very key slot in that first year of the next system. 3D Zelda could certainly wait till the next holiday, maybe, a fair bit longer than that, but you would still have several years before you run up on the end of the decade.
Right. And you have to figure, look, I'm just going to guess right now that Metroid is headed for a double system launch, because at this point it's getting to the point now where it's like, is it worth delaying it for whatever the next system is? And pulling a Breath of the Wild. Now, granted, nobody, like, by comparison, nobody cares about Metroid. Like, and I don't mean that
it doesn't have the same kind of pull. No,
it's like the ratio is so wild that it's like, well, that's not really gonna move the needle enough. You need something else in that launch window. But at the rate that Monolith seems to be able to create games, you figure there's one in there somewhere. I could see Zelda being even as much as the third holiday, depending on when the system launches.
Yeah, and they'll probably, they might sort of drag it out. That might be one of the rare cases where it's like, oh no, we'll show stuff from this well before it comes out, because a lot of the time it's like, no, let's not announce a game until it's really close, and then just, once we know, so we don't fall into any, logo-based, fucking time loops, or like they've done with Metroid Prime 4. But with Zelda, they probably have the willingness to say, to keep people of that, you've got to buy this system, because, an E3 Direct, here's this teaser for the next big Zelda. And of course, we've also got to consider, although this could take very quite some years on the evidence of the Mario movie, but we've also got to consider how they might think about it relative to this Zelda movie that may well be with us before the end of the decade. And would you want to have that, if that's coming out towards the back end of the decade, be in a situation where you haven't had like a big mainline Zelda to kind of rekindle, that enthusiasm and awareness of the property before that happens? So I would imagine it's possible, but I would imagine you're pretty safe to say yes.
Yeah. And I think they could have gotten Tears of the Kingdom out sooner if they wanted to. We know they had the very long polishing time on it, but with Breath of the Wild
and no DLC, seemingly, which is breaking from their usual sort of model that they established with the service. So like, okay, we're gonna give it the long polish time, we're gonna get it done, and then we're gonna pull the developers onto presumably stuff for the Switch successor, because that is more important than getting even more money out of people that bought Tears of the Kingdom.
Right, and with Breath of the Wild still selling, there probably wasn't a rush to get Tears of the Kingdom out.
Also, a fair point. Yeah, that did have a kind of lasting appeal that Zelda's, even though when they've been big sellers, probably haven't had a lot of that before. And once you introduce Tears of the Kingdom, it kind of cannibalizes that to an extent. So you're leaving it to the kind of, I don't want to say the last possible moment, but certainly quite a long time. Did make a certain amount of sense. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, oh well, it's definitely another 6.5 years, guys. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. Guillaume?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that you guys said. Like, I don't think it's going to miss 2030. That's far enough into the future. You wouldn't go 6 years into the Switch 2 or whatever to see it. I mean, like, if it comes down to having to make the games a little bit smaller, maybe I wouldn't see a problem with that. Also, I don't really know anything about game development, but I like to pretend that I do. And there seems to have been, there has been talk about, Nintendo making more efforts maybe to get the Unreal Engine to work well, to play nice with their hardware, or vice versa, rather, their hardware to play nice with the Unreal Engine. So who knows, if for the next Zelda, they're going to make their own engine, or if they're going to use Unreal or something else. That could change, I guess, the horizon that we're looking at here, for a new game.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's going to do it for email this week. As always, rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. As we mentioned earlier, 7th guest, you should be playing it. You should be sending us your comments. You should be doing it all in one sitting. As your doctor, I believe this is good for you. So go ahead and do that. And I think that's going to do it. Greg, what's our music?
Well, yeah, I brought them up earlier on because they were on my mind for this reason. Goodfeel in Japan have just self-published a spiritual successor to the Goemon series, again, because they are veterans of that series, many of the personnel in the company, called Mameda no Bakaru, where you have a sort of Tanuki-based kind of protagonist that takes on various forms, but one of them is, pretty Goemon-ish, although he's got kind of the bachi, the kind of taiko drumsticks that he kind of uses, like tonfa, instead of Goemon's pipe, of course, that it was his trademark weapon. But just if you could see it, the Famicast YouTube channel, for instance, has quite a lot of gameplay footage. Just they may well have more because it was just the day it came out, basically, as when we recorded this. But there's no suggestion at this time that it will be localized or anything. As I said, they have self-published this in Japan with no kind of obvious path to localization, and it is, as the Goemon games were, pretty profoundly Japanese, and many of those did not get localized. We got some, but very many we didn't get. And then, including the DS game, which kind of essentially kind of brought it to a close, really. I think there's been some like patchy slot stuff.
Yeah.
As is Konami's wont, but not really anything since those days of the sort of mid-aughts. But this game looks interesting. I'll keep an eye on it, and maybe it'll be something that's worth blundering through without knowledge of the language. I have done that with various games, specifically Goemon games, in the past, and still had a good time. But it would be nice if I didn't have to. But we'll wait and see on that. But I thought, well, let's have a look and at the sort of have we used any Goemon music in the past? And for closing music, it would seem not, incredibly. All these episodes that we've done closing music, I mean, I think we probably put some into the Legend of the Mystical Ninja retroactive that we did before the closing music era began. But other than that, apparently not. And there's so much great Goemon music. It's really hard to say, okay, well, I can pick basically anything, right? Like, it's quite difficult to pick. But I'm going with something from Goemon's Great Adventure, the second of the Ganbare Goemon games on the N64, which kind of went, instead of a kind of actually pre-Ocarina of Time kind of 3D action-adventure game that the first N64 game was, Goemon's Great Adventure was side-scrolling game, basically just had polygonal graphics. But really, really great soundtrack. I mean, Konami, I guess they were known for their soundtracks and sound design in general and stuff. When you consider this is the N64, where, musical fidelity equals CPU processing power had to go into it and stuff. It's a very, very rich sounded, kind of, instruments and everything is just and just the amount of songs and all that. It's really, really good. The one I've gone with is called Burning My Soul. And I think this actually incorporates a sort of few different phases that would play into kind of one kind of loop here. But, no, the really nice up tempo. Not so much this is less the goofy side of Goemon, because there's a lot of Goemon soundtracks that are like explicitly comedic and, overlapping with like Parodius, which Goemon appeared in quite a lot, as well. But, this is more just up tempo, Japan themed, really great stuff. So hopefully, people enjoy that, and hopefully somehow, we'll get something out of it, because Konami just, I've said it loads of times, but it's like, okay, well, if you're not going to do anything new, do a collection like Contra and Castlevania. If you're not going to do that, just give it to NSO like you just gave Castlevania Legends. Just do something, please.
All right. Well, on that, I'll call it a hopeful wish. It's time to end the show. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.